This video is for informational and educational purposes only. It's not a replacement for professional guidance. Always consult with a qualified expert, like a doctor or therapist, if you have concerns. We believe in your journey of growth and encourage you to seek support when needed. Remember, every step forward, no matter how small, is a victory. You've got this.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to dive in.
Awesome. So today we're tackling something pretty big. The science behind addiction. We're looking at chapter 2 of this book on recovery. And I gotta say, it's not your typical science read.
Oh yeah, what's different about it?
Well, they explain all these complex brain processes, but they do it using these really cool metaphors. Like they compare the brain to a symphony, a garden, even a butterfly.
Ah, interesting. Metaphors can be super powerful. They can make these complicated scientific ideas way more relatable.
Totally. So let's jump into it, shall we? The chapter starts off by describing the brain as a symphony orchestra. All these different parts working together, right? Beautiful harmony.
Right, I get that. Like all the instruments playing together in sync.
Exactly. But then they introduce addiction and, well, I'm guessing things get a bit out of tune.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Substances come in and they mess up that delicate balance the brain's got going on. It's like, imagine if someone just cranked up the volume on the tuba in the middle of a performance.
Oh, yeah, that'd throw everything off.
Right. It would totally disrupt the whole orchestra. And that's kind of what happens with addiction. The substances mess up how the brain normally functions.
I see. So are the neurons those like tiny little instruments in this metaphor? The ones sending signals in the brain?
You got it. The neurons are like the musicians in our brain orchestra. They're communicating with each other all the time using these chemical messengers, which are called neurotransmitters.
Neurotransmitters, right.
Yeah. It's like, you know how the conductor uses their baton to direct the musicians? The neurotransmitters are like little batons sending messages from one neuron to the next. And those messages are crucial for everything. Like literally everything we do, our thoughts, our emotions, even just moving our bodies.
Wow, so even small disruptions could really throw things off, huh?
Exactly.
Speaking of disruptions, the chapter also talks about this thing called the dopamine dance. Sounds pretty fun at first. I have a feeling it's not so enjoyable once addiction comes into play.
Yeah, the dopamine dance sounds cute, but it's actually a big part of how addiction works in the brain. See, dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's all about pleasure and reward. It's the thing that makes us feel good when we do something enjoyable. You know, it's like our brain's way of saying, hey, that was awesome, let's do it again.
Okay, so like if I eat a piece of cake and it tastes delicious, that's dopamine doing its thing.
Exactly. But the problem is, addictive substances. They hijack this whole system. They trick the brain into releasing way, way more dopamine than it normally would. Like way more than you'd get from a piece of cake or a good workout.
Oh, wow. So it's like they're overloading the system then.
Yeah, totally. Like, think about it this way. It's like suddenly blasting all the trumpets in our symphony analogy out of nowhere.
Okay, I get that. It'd be overwhelming.
It's overwhelming for the brain, too. And over time, that constant overstimulation, it just throws everything out of whack. It messes with the brain's natural balance, makes it crave that intense dopamine rush even more.
So it's not just about willpower then, huh? Like addiction actually changes how the brain works, making it much harder to resist those cravings.
That's a really important point. Addiction is a real physical change in the brain. But, and this is the encouraging part, the brain can also change back. It can adapt and actually form new connections. It's got this incredible ability called neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
It's like the brain's superpower, right?
Totally. It's basically the brain's capacity to change and grow. It's constantly rewiring itself in response to our experiences. And that means even if addiction has caused some damage, the brain can heal and create new, healthier pathways.
It's hopeful. And that's where the garden metaphor comes in, right?
Yeah.
The book talks about recovery as tending a garden.
You got it. Think about it. Recovery is kind of like weeding out those harmful substances and behaviors, the stuff that's choking the growth of your garden, and then, cultivating those healthy habits that let your brain actually heal and flourish.
Okay, so getting rid of those bad habits, it's like pulling out weeds that are choking the flowers. But what's stopping those weeds from just growing right back? How do you keep them gone in this garden?
Well, that's where therapy and support groups come in. They give you the tools and the support to not only pull out those weeds, but to nourish the soil, right? So those weeds are less likely to grow back in the first place.
The soil being like our brain.
Yes. And, when you consistently engage in those positive activities, use those tools you've learned, you're actually rewiring your brain thanks to neuroplasticity. Like you're literally reshaping your garden, choosing what grows there.
Wow, that's a really powerful image.
It is. And it kind of ties into that metamorphosis metaphor the book uses, the whole caterpillar turning into a butterfly thing.
Right, the butterfly. I'll be honest, I was kind of skeptical about all these metaphors at first,
Mm,
but they really do help make sense of all this stuff.
they really do.
So walk me through this butterfly thing. How does that connect to recovery?
Well, think about it. When a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, it's not just about changing how it looks, right? It's like a total transformation inside and out. And recovery is kind of like that. It's about personal growth.
Yeah.
It's about shedding those old patterns and becoming a healthier, stronger version of yourself.
I like that. It's a beautiful image. But it also makes me wonder, if everyone's experience with addiction is so unique, how can there be, like, one right way to go through this whole metamorphosis thing?
That's such a good question. And that actually brings us to another metaphor the book uses, the kaleidoscope.
Whoa, okay, we're going all in on the metaphors now. What's the kaleidoscope all about?
Well, think about how a kaleidoscope works. It's got all those colorful pieces, right? And every time you twist it, you get a completely new and unique pattern.
Right, yeah, it's like this beautiful, ever-changing pattern of colors.
Exactly. And that's kind of like recovery. Every person's journey is unique, just like every kaleidoscope pattern. It's shaped by their experiences, their choices, their strengths, their struggles.
It's kind of beautiful when you think about it that way,
Right.
recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to recovery.
Absolutely. And speaking of individual journeys, it's important to remember that recovery isn't always like a straight line upwards. There are going to be bumps in the road. That's where the river metaphor comes in.
Okay, I was wondering when we'd get back to the river. So the journey's like navigating a river. Sometimes it's smooth sailing, but then you hit some rapids.
Exactly. There are going to be challenges, setbacks, There might even be moments where you feel like you're getting pulled back into old patterns. It happens. But the key is to look at those challenges as opportunities for learning and growth.
Easier said than done sometimes, I'd imagine. But I get your point. It's about adapting, right? Learning how to navigate those rough waters.
Right. It's like a skilled rafter. They don't just give up when they hit the rapids, right? They use their skills, their experience to navigate through them and come out stronger on the other side.
I love that analogy. Okay, last thing I wanted to touch on, the link between physical health and recovery. The book talks about exercise and nutrition, but I'd love to hear you elaborate on that. Like, how do those things actually help rewire the brain?
Ah, yes. This is a really important point. It's not just about feeling good physically, although that's definitely a bonus, right?
Sure.
But engaging in these healthy habits like exercise and proper nutrition, it actually causes positive changes in the brain, like at a chemical level.
No way.
Yeah. For example, exercise has been shown to increase levels of this protein called BDNF, which basically supports the growth and survival of those neurons we were talking about.
So going for a run or hitting the gym, that's literally like giving my brain a boost, helping those healthy connections grow stronger.
You got it. And then proper nutrition, that's like giving your brain the building blocks it needs to function at its best, like making sure your garden has, nutrient-rich soil.
Makes sense. Wow, this has been so insightful. So to recap, addiction, it throws the brain's whole symphony out of whack, but recovery is possible. Through tending our mental gardens, going through a personal metamorphosis, navigating that river of challenges.
Beautifully put. And I think the biggest takeaway here is that this isn't about blame or shame. Understanding the science behind addiction is about empowerment. It's about realizing that the brain can heal, it can adapt, it can change, and that's a pretty amazing thing.
Totally agree. And to anyone out there who might be struggling, please remember there are resources available. There are people who understand and support systems ready to help you on your unique journey.
And as you continue to explore this topic, think about this. How can understanding the science of addiction, even if you're not personally facing it, how can that knowledge inspire you to make positive changes in your own life?
That's something to think about.
Right. It's all about harnessing the power of neuroplasticity and creating the life and the brain you want to have.
Love that. All right, that's a wrap for today's deep dive. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for having me.